Well, thank you, Chairman Poe. I think you're holding a very important hearing at a very important time here as we start to think strategically about what it means in a world in which the United States increasingly has the capacity to ship oil to allies that are really under a great deal of pressure, and how that could be used as part of our diplomatic efforts, as part of our efforts, for example, with Iran to maintain sanctions. One of the things that I think should give us pause is that in our efforts to deny the regime in Tehran nuclear weapons capability, the United States and our European allies levied devastating sanctions against Iran by doing one thing, primarily, in the original bill, and that was targeting their ability to export oil. And that severely limited their crude oil sales and denied them the ability to repatriate hard currency from those sales. Now, these sanctions against Iranian crude are often described as Iran's Achilles heel, yet we're imposing the same kinds of sanctions on our own country if you think through what we've done, because we are basically at a point where, without the crude export relief valve, oil companies will pull back on what will be increasingly uneconomic production. And the relief valve here is one that we could have used more effectively with respect to our allies, because there were 5 of our allies that were still taking oil shipments from Iran. We could have supplied that differential. We could have brought additional pressure to bear. And should, again, this situation in Iran not be solved in ensuing months or years, my hope is that we will have the capacity to think about what we could do in order to step in. At the same time, the Russian annexation of the Crimean Peninsula was made easier by its energy grip over Eastern Europe and especially over Ukraine. Russia has large oil and gas reserves, not as large as ours. They don't produce as much as we do, but almost as much. And it accounts for 70% of their trade and 52% of the budget for Russia that goes to support their military and their government. The crisis in Crimea has done little to dampen Russian oil sales, and Putin is freely selling oil and gas around the world, and especially in Eastern Europe, at monopoly prices, and thus has, unfortunately, a tremendous amount of influence there. As we look at our strategies for the future, and I'm going to quote General Martin Dempsey here, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he says, as we look at our strategies for the future, I think we've got to pay more and particular attention to energy as an instrument of national power. And I think that has to be factored in to the equation here. If we increase our supply of oil, especially into Eastern Europe, we will dent Russia's leverage on other countries and reduce the revenues that fund Russia's aggression. So, in addition, I think there's another point here, and it's a wider point, and it has to do with our domestic manufacturing and making certain that, when practical, we take oil from our allies, such as Canada, because we are less susceptible to risk, political risk, than to the extent that we're reliant upon others. That's reason one. And reason two is because if we don't have that pipeline built from Canada, that pipeline will be built, but it will be built west to Vancouver, and that oil will be shipped to our economic competitor. So I believe the President should also stop blocking that long-delayed Keystone XL pipeline, which would create, I think all of us agree, at least 20,000 direct jobs. There may be a disagreement on the number of indirect jobs. We think it's several 100,000, and would enhance our energy security in partnership with Canada, our closest ally, one of our most reliable allies. And this is an opportunity not to be missed, an opportunity to reduce our vulnerability to political decisions and events in unfriendly countries that are also unstable. Yet our Secretary of State is conducting yet another review, and this one on the national security impacts of the pipeline, which will only further delay the project. So the time is now to end our self-imposed sanctions on energy exports to our allies. America leads the world with our dynamic and innovative energy sector. It's time we let it benefit our economy and our global security interests, and frankly, do something to decrease our deficits, and frankly, increase the Russian deficit right now. So thank you.